So we're reviewing this guy. He's a songwriter, he's an author, he's a screenwriter, a composer. He's even been an actor. He's had his own band. He's got like a baritone voice. He's quite a deep voice. He has done many albums, like From Her to Eternity, The Firstborn is Dead, Kicking Against the Pricks, Your Funeral, My Trial. I'm talking about Nick Cave. Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, right, okay.
So that, we're talking about Nick Drake, who is good. And so obviously I've just alienated potential new viewers by taking a serious, really sad, much-loved artist and just doing a silly joke about his name.
Yeah.
But we genuinely did get the two mixed up, didn't we? The first album. So he was signed to Island, so the question is what happened there then. We reviewed Pink Moon. It's a bit like Syd Barrett's third album. Although obviously with this guy, it was finished and he was coherent and he wasn't into his really awfulness when he did that album. But it's that similar thing in that it's kind of not finished. He released it, but it was just him. And this is much more varied and it's produced. It's much less stark. You shouldn't start with Pink Moon. You should probably start with this one. I think that's the problem. His second album, he recorded his first album when he was still at uni. And the Bryter Layter, if that's coming from the same place as Pink Moon, it's gonna get better. Things are rubbish and melancholy now, but life will improve. And it feels like an album. It sparkles like an album. There's a fair amount of variation of different stuff. You've got members of Fairport Convention playing on it, and it is quite up. Actually, it is melancholy. It is that folky British thing, but it is quite up. Really nice arrangements, some very folky songs. Occasionally a little jazzy. I mean, I think that's talked about, but I think it's exaggerated. It's only one song, really. There's even a Pink Floyd like gospel singer a little bit, and some saxophone. The folkiness does make me think of early King Crimson, and Giles and Fripp with the flutes and the Ian McDonaldiness, and that works really well. It does. It weirdly feels like it's only the sound quality which shows its age. It could be a new album, like an obscure thing that you find and you think, oh, that's good. That was made now. Only the sound quality gives that away, I think. So that's it. Yes, there you go.
That's what you've got. Okay. If I was to say this sounded like a Bell and Sebastian cover album, would that be really offensive?
Probably. But it's essentially what I just said, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds really contemporary. It sounds new.
It does sound pretty contemporary, I can admit that. The only thing I'd take issue with what you said where it sounds really varied and stuff like that, because my main criticism was that it kind of lacks definition. You kind of just get lost into the album. It's sort of like, well, I didn't really notice the song changing until quite late in the album. Actually, I actually think until you get to like Poor Boy, I actually thought, okay, this sounds a little bit different now. But apart from that, it sounded quite homogenous. Now, I am aware that this is sort of like a 1970 odd album sort of thing, and since then we've had the sort of compression wars going on. So maybe I'm just not tuned into it. I just can't. Things need to be quite stark in order to get noticed these days. And I was aware of that. I was listening to it actually. I thought actually my ears aren't ready to really decipher what's going on here. And it wasn't just me. I played it for Sarah in the car today, and she said exactly the same thing. She says, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's a bit of a waste. But she says it's nice background music, which I kind of agree with. It's sort of like the kind of thing, if you had, this is sort of like audio geekery, but if you had like sort of like a class A amp, single-ended, this would play really well on it. I don't know why, but there's that. It's just sort of quite light. You've got the flute in there, and you've got the saxophone in there. That tends to pick that type of stuff out quite well, and you get details that you wouldn't realise are there normally.
Yeah, like an MP3 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would benefit from some sensitivity.
Yeah.
In the listening, which maybe I didn't have. I don't know. There is actually nothing right. It does, I actually think this is probably a big influence on Belle and Sebastian, because
I would assume so. Yeah.
It sounds very, very similar. Or my response to it is very similar anyway. It's sort of like, well, okay, it's nice and all that, but it's not really something that's gonna engage me on an emotional level. It's a bit like jazz, really. Maybe that's where the jazz thing comes from. There are jazzy moments on there, especially the piano. The arrangements are very good, actually.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot going on there, and it's very well put together. It doesn't sound like a competition for space. It sounds like it is all serving the music, but it's sort of, I don't know. It needs something for me to go, oh yeah, that's really good. And I didn't feel that really came until Poor Boy. Then I found Poor Boy, Northern Sky and Sunday to be quite good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think we've got a different take on this Kev.
Yeah. I mean that is the controversial thing about this album is that it wasn't all those arrangements, all the big elaborate turning a song into a big thing wasn't really what he wanted to do. It was really Joe Boyd that pushed it in that direction and said you need to turn this into something that people are going to sit and listen to, and just you with the guitar is just too much, too harsh, so it's possible, actually. I mean, our review of Pink Moon wasn't a review. I watched it. No, because we just didn't engage with it at all. It's possible you would prefer Pink Moon because it's just the songs and all this production, which isn't part of his own creative process, has sort of washed over it, maybe.
Well, I mean, it sounds quite folky, and for me, one of the big things about folk music is actually the content of the lyrics. Yeah. And I couldn't make a judgment on that because I couldn't actually hear them.
You couldn't really say.
No, I can't make out the words. I can't make out the themes or anything like that. So I am really sort of.
So where did you listen to it?
In the car. And in my office.
All right. Because I played it on the PC and in the kitchen.
If I concentrate, I'll put it this way: if I concentrated on what you were saying, I would probably pick it out. But I would have to do that. I'd have to make a conscious effort to really sort of right now I'm going to get to the bottom of what's going on in this song. And normally I don't need to do that. I just sort of I sit there and then it demands attention, if you know what I mean. I don't have to think about paying it attention. It just does it. Whereas with this, it's sort of like I almost have to realise, hang on, I haven't listened to this. I haven't listened to what he's saying. I need to sit and listen to it. So if I concentrated, I could sit and listen to it, but I have to do that. And for me, that's not folk. Folk is sort of it's all about the content of the words.
I mean, obviously lyrics are a big part of folk, but I like the part of folk I like is not the wordy stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's that kind of songwriter, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a great reputation. I presume he's got things to say which are interesting.
Yes, certainly grim.
And I'm sort of a bit none the wiser having listened to this album several times. what it is he's got to say.
It's not. I mean, it's pretty predictably not cheerful, but kind. It's all sun and the moon and talking about nature and the. But this kind of melancholy of it and the kind of, in the end, it's very bleak.
That's weird because I mean, having listened to this, I would not pick that up at all. I think this is quite a happy album.
Well, that's like I said, it is kind of up.
Yeah.
It does that thing of being up, where the other album was just bleak. Whereas this one is kind of up, and I think that was the idea of all the arrangements, to invite you in a bit.
Yeah.
His guitar playing is really good. I don't think I picked up that on the previous one either, which is strange because you can hear it much more on the other one. Apparently he spent a lot of time practicing. He did get good reviews for this album, but he did get a lot of wobbly reviews as well. I think that he just wasn't cool, and that seems strange in retrospect. You'd think that the 70s is like that kind of thing would be really liked by Melody Maker and all that, and it wasn't. But he was getting good reviews. It was Pink Moon where he started to get better reviews, and it was already too late then, basically. Because after this one, Joe Boyd abandoned him. This wasn't a hit, and then that was it. Joe Boyd, I think, moved to America, and that was the end of that. I don't know if I said this last time. He is from Tamworth in Arden.
Is he?
Yeah, which is really near to where we are.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And he went to college in 5 Ways, and then he went to Cambridge, and he did his first album at uni, but dropped out of uni after his second year to be a star. Now, here's the thing, though. We were talking about where's the art, but this guy is a true artist. He decided that Joe Boyd doing this production. This is Joe Boyd, remember, who likes Sid. Not natural sound enough, too overproduced, and he did no interviews and no playing, no touring.
Wow, I think I know where the problem is. Yeah.
And of course means no success.
Yeah.
Even in the mid-70s, you can't just... How do people even know you're there? You don't even play. And he was suffering from depression. He was on drugs. That was after this, though, when he was actually prescribed antidepressants mixed with the weed. And at this point, he was smoking loads of weed and probably some other stuff. And sadly, that's what people talk about rather than the music. And it is one of those things where a bit like Sid, where you question how much of his troubled mind informed the music. And it's probably quite a lot, I think. And certainly the album titles, Bryter Layter and Pink Moon, things are getting better. It's going to be okay. Say a lot, I think.
Yeah.
But the really bad period came after his lack of success, actually. So it all went wrong, basically, and he ended up going back to live with his parents for 2 years with nothing to do because he just wasn't a success. His album sold like 4,000 copies each or something. So he just went home. So it's not surprising that he didn't last much longer.
So how was it rediscovered then?
I think it's
quite popular now.
Yeah, it seems to be a really slow thing. I think it might even be quite recent. I mean, there was like a box set released at the end of the 70s, and even that didn't sell a lot, but it was enough. And obviously the reviewers liked him, so that was enough. It wasn't just deleted and disappear. But I think it's much more recent that people actually noticed. I think here we go. He was on a Pink Moon off the next album was used in a Volkswagen advert. So he went from US album sales from 6,000 to 74,000 in 1 year.
Right.
And then people started talking about it, so people started buying it, and DJs started talking about it. So it's really recent, and that must be it. That must be why it sounds contemporary. It is. It's like what people have heard. That I like that. I'll do some stuff like that.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I sort of the reason I mentioned the amp thing is because it's one of the things I've been looking at this week. I quite like the idea of building my own tube amp.
Yeah, have some vinyls.
Yeah, and this would be one of the first things I put on to just say, well, like, what have I missed? Because I really think this is the kind of thing that would go well on a Class A single-ended tube amp. You know, that pick up the detail, not overly reliant on the bass.
Yeah.
I think this would be great, and maybe given that, I'd appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's what it was made for, obviously, but not made as expensively and as well as Dark Side of the Moon, which you can play on anything.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing.
Yeah,
but yeah, you have to play Dark Side of the Moon on that as well, wouldn't you? And that would be a thing.
Yeah,
that's the first thing I always think of. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. What people talk about, it's like I think he's a Seattle guy who disappeared in the river. That's all I've got. He's like one of those people who made like one album, and that guy, he's only remembered because he died. And this is the thing with Nick Drake, in that everyone talks about the fact that he died, and that that hangs over everything. And it's weird that he was a musician and stopped. And again, that's a very Sid thing.
Yeah.
But his music wasn't like Sid's. It wasn't just nonsense. He was perfectly capable of making good music.
Yeah.
So that's, why did he have to stop? I suppose it's depression. Depression is a complex thing, something. Yeah, so for me, that's a 4-egg album.
Tricky.
But it is the starting point. You start with this album and then you listen to the others, I think.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, I can tell there is something there, but I just didn't get it. I need to spend more time listening to it, I think.
It's weird, isn't it? I was really thinking, well, the weather and everything is just perfect for this kind of thing. You'd think, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
so
but it did
driving
sound
down
quite...
the road with the leaves and.
I mean, put it this way: I put it on today because I knew Sarah wouldn't have an issue with it. Right. I said, "Oh, I'm going to put the music on. I'm going to put the album on that we're reviewing today." She says, "Oh, it's not rubbish, is it, Sam?"
It's much better when it's rubbish.
I said, "Well, you'll see." And she said, "Actually, this isn't too bad. This is quite nice." And then we were talking about it a little, and we had pretty much the same experience. It's just a bit of a mush, and it was weird that I'd identified Poor Boy.
Yeah, well, that's the jazzy one. That's the one. People say, "Oh, there's jazz on there as well." There's only one song. As
the one where it sort of gets going, and she said, and when that came on, she said, "Oh, this is all right. It's a bit better now. It's a bit more to it." So I thought that was coming, and I thought you'd probably feel the same way because there's I had a bit of consensus with someone else on it. And when you said it's really varied and all that, I was like, "Oh God, that's not what I heard at all."
That's all the same.
I mean, the title track "Bryter Layter," it just did nothing. It was just the same as everything else.
That's a strange one because I said, "Computer, Alexa, play Bryter Layter," and I forgot to say the album, and it played me that, and I was like, "Oh." So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then when I play the whole album, it's a whole thing,
Yeah. I'm going to give it 3 eggs, but I do suspect it will be promoted at some point.
Here you
go. Yeah.
Nick Drake. So yeah, that was a Patreon request.
Yeah.
www.patreon.com/WentonKing.
Yeah.
It's $5 for a request, which is a lot, and we appreciate the continuing patronage of those who are patroning. And if you don't want to do that, that's cool too.
Absolutely.
We'll be back next week with another patroning, and it is going to be Apathena by Faster Circuits. Okay, that's interesting because I have no clue what that is, so that's the thing.